You're saying that the hormone that makes you happy is the one that's needed for you to push.
Oxytocin. That's the hormone that helps with the baby
Kubuhlungu
bearing down.
kunjalo.
Kubuhlungu kunjalo.
That is so wild.
So we follow the birthing mom where she is, because the body tells them as well.
Oh.
Yes, the body tells them when they feel like squatting, they'll say, I think I need to squat. Like squatters, we're just on the lookout the entire time. And then they want to walk, then they want to get on all fours. We adjust with the mom, to the mom. In hospitals, they're going to put you on your back. And when you think about that, inconvenience, I realized during birth, Utu probably was sexually assaulted. Because that pain, we've got what we call the ring of fire when the baby's crowning, when the head is coming out.
Yes.
And that pain sort of reminds them of that. So this is usually when in public spaces goes out to vula imilenze ngalokhu ntontoni, right? Because they tend to then shut their knees, close.
In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways.
The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or position of this channel, its hosts, or affiliates. This podcast is a platform for open discussions and exploration of various perspectives, including controversial and unconventional ideas. We encourage viewers to think critically, do their own research, and form their own opinions. The content is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as fact, advice, or an endorsement of any specific viewpoint. Viewers' discretion is advised. Umoya Ulight, Umoya Upright. Welcome to another episode of MOYA Podcast, where we try to give you the education that you're not going to get at the Mlungu schools. Thank you so much for all the support you're giving us. We are definitely growing. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing as usual. And thank you to our members who help us keep our lights on. So obviously, we always give you guys interesting topics. We're trying to grow as a nation. We're trying to heal, trying to unlearn. Today, we're going to speak to the women, to the mothers, the childbearers. We're speaking about the womb. We've got GOSEGO. I know you've got a Tswana surname that I must quickly now look up again. KOTU-RAMMOPO. Yes. Thank you so much for coming through. When we were trying to get hold of you, they were like, she's a doula. We're like, what the hell? He doula? What's doula? I mean, I saved you as the doula because I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah. Yes.
So, yes, what is a doula?
A doula is a birth coach, essentially. The name itself is a Greek name, but essentially the service has always been there for Tina, especially as Africans. So a doula is a birthing coach. We support birthing women during labor and birth, but there are different kinds of doulas. So you have a labor and birth doula. We have bereavement doulas. Oh. We have death doulas. We have abortion doulas. So we have doulas on a different level of the spectrum. So I am a birth and postpartum doula. But the bulk of my work, I've realized in the work, the bulk of my work is in the sitting down with the clients and the mothers and assessing isimo senjani before the birthing mom goes and gives birth.
So we are here for you. Please don't feel rushed. Take your time.
Yeah.
How do you find yourself on this journey and what drew you to the womb?
It's been an interesting journey. I got into this work, I don't know how I knew, but I had a big contract. I was doing editing for someone, and I took on an additional editing contract, and I was cooking meals for people. And I remember saying to my husband, Wuti, I am so tired and I need something to balance my soul. And I went for this. I decided, Wuti, let me do a doula course. I can't even say about what happened exactly that led me to that specifically. And then along the way, then I realized, Wuti, I have been doing the work all along. Even when I was still in corporate, I've been doing this work all along, like with children. I'm that person, Wuti, there will always be some kids who come through and they're telling me their stories and, so that was then the journey, Wuti. I was doing it to help my spirit be balanced, and it then took over everything. And I started now, and of course, then I thought, okay, it'll be about birth. I'll go and I help women give birth and everything. And then it started evolving into other things. I realized there are gaps even in the maternal health care space. So, a lot of women go and they give birth, but there are a lot of issues that are unresolved in themselves and in their families. And also these things, they translate into birth, And
Break
I
it down
realized,
for us.
well, a big one that I noticed for myself, Wuti, in my journey as a parent, I'm always struggling with issues with my mother. And then as I grow older, then I started realizing, Wuti, there's some things, then I realized, Wuti, oh, this is why my mother was saying this, But because some issues are unresolved, the natural thing for some of us is to be resistant. Ukuthi kaloku soze abe right, because you're still holding on to their feelings, right? And then I realized, Wuti, we do hold on to that thing, Wuti. I'm not going to admit that she was right. But that's a source of healing, that's an opportunity for healing. And that was my gap with my mother. Wuti, then some things as they happen, then I call them like, yo, Maskosi, I get it now.
Yes.
I get it now, because we're not always going to get what we think we deserve in terms of apologies or acknowledgement with our parents, because now they did the best that they could, right?
Yes.
So then I noticed, Uguti, even in birth, there's a yearning for some women. Uguti, I wish it was my mom who was here while I give birth. I wish it was my mom who was helping me to navigate breastfeeding and everything. Then I realized, Uguti, they're sitting down with my clients and asking, but how's therapy? How's mom? Oh, mama, can she come through the next time, And then I assess there as well. And
So you're saying the mother wound affects us women?
Definitely. Because even after you give birth, there are still some cultural things we are expected to observe, even if the relationship is not great, right? Kuthiwa uzawubuya, you have to come home. And everything. But there are unresolved feelings there. And it's also natural for new moms to want to figure it out themselves. So there will always be like a bit of a clash that happens somewhere
Because it's
along
my
there.
baby.
Yes. So no mama, it's her baby. Now she also wants to teach you, but there are unresolved issues. Eninazo, as mother and daughter. So I facilitate that as well. Uti, I ask them, the grandmothers to be, Uti, how was your birth when you gave birth to her? And one of the things that I've picked up as well, Uti, then there's an inclination to say, Uti, oh, highway to Andy Bonim now, why do we even need to do this? Tina, we birthed and we just did it and everything, So then I have to remind them, Uti, it's supposed to be with care. It's supposed to be with love, in this process. And there's a coming together of sorts that happens in that process, So then when Umtu then goes to give birth, there are some things that are resolved, or there's a gate that's been opened, a gap, okay, we need to resolve things, no mama, and also finding out what her journey was like into motherhood,
Because that's always a thing, right?
That's always a thing.
The generational trauma that's been passed down and is being passed down.
Yes, and even those that do know, a lot of women don't know how their mothers birthed and what the experience was. And a lot of them that do know, it's usually when you're in trouble and then kutwa, I was in labor for 2 days and then this is what you do,
Yes.
And but the conversation that we then have mentally, Guti, it should be a struggle. That 2 days should be, it is laborious. It's labor intensive. Birth is a lot, But emotionally, we try to come as clearly as possible, Guti, seeing as with unresolved issues or not even knowing Guti, there are unresolved issues.
You know, you guys always act as if like having a child is just, but when we have real conversations with women and mothers, when they're like, whoa, actually having a child, that whole process, I would not do it. So many women I've heard say they'd never do it again after doing it once.
And then when they have doulas, a big bulk of my clients, let me say 80% are second-time moms. It's very rare to get a first-time moms because also it's an experience you can't explain to someone until they've gone through it. So then a lot of people think, I can do it by myself. And when you Google what a doula is, anyways, they'll say, they help you breathe and relax. But it's deeper than that. There are those who do specifically that. I realized, it is bigger than that. It's more than just breathing and everything. So it's understandable to some extent ukuthi abantu would feel ukuthi I don't think this is a service that I need. And the system anyways is designed that way. Having a doula has big benefits. It's like we can take down the period of labor by 40%.
What?
Yes. It's like proper, our grandmothers were onto something.
Like you can have a baby 6 months.
No. The labor itself, not the pregnancy.
The labor
itself.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So the truth behind it, and of course Abantu would want to say the science behind it, but the truth behind it is that when you feeling safe during labor and birth and you're feeling taken care of and everything, it has an effect on your emotions. It has an effect on your emotions, your hormones, they change. Your oxytocin levels go up. And so all your feel-good hormones, they go up. And those are the hormones that are necessary for labor to progress well. So our work doesn't quite work for the system because there's also the business of hospitals.
Yes.
Right? And the business of hospitals, Gamaya Maklesha, is put as many people in bed as possible.
Yes.
So if I can get you to labor and birth quicker, relatively, and then by the end of the day, it means that baby wasn't occupied and there wasn't money behind it. So there is like a real truth to it, this whole process, and you're feeling safe and you tend to progress much better. Hospitals are not designed that way. The nurses are taking care of multiple people. So if you're a first-time mom, then you are going to have a challenging time if you don't have a doula, for example, because then they assess you and then bam. And that will come and check in on you after 4 hours. Kula 4 hours, you're thinking the worst. You don't understand what it is that you're going through, these cramps and all these things. So Tina, we are trained then in the physiology of birth. We understand how birth works. We understand the language of birth. Ganinzi, in the different stages of labor, there are different things that we look out for. For some of us, when it's spiritual, there are other elements to it. It's like my nose is a big part of the birthing process. I can smell everything.
What?
Yes. I've had an incident where a client was being told she's not fully dilated, she's like 6 centimeters, like 7 at the most, and I was like, no, this baby's coming. I could smell it everywhere. I could smell it. And birth is not pretty, by the way. It's messy, right?
Yes.
And so in that mess, everything to me smells like the womb. So I knew this baby is close, And Nyani, when we were turning and they're not patients because they're not sick.
Yes,
but
the mom.
The mom, yes. When we were turning the mom over and literally the baby's head popped out.
Yo.
And like, I knew. So there's signs everywhere. You know, you have to be vigilant. There's signs everywhere. It's in their language, the things that they say, it's in their feet. There's a point where they move their feet in a certain way, and that tells me how far you are in labor.
What? This is so deep.
It is deep. So for us as a society to having expected and accepted ukuthi, oh no, you go there and you get checked and you just have to progress, and then ukuthi, no, you're not progressing, we're going to C-section, and you just go along with it. That's a big flaw in how we've been approaching birth. So Tina, as observers of birth, and we don't do medical interventions, by the way, you literally just there for the mom and you regulating her the entire time. And it's advocacy work as well, because a lot of times birthing moms are spoken over. Okay, this is what we're going to do now. We're going to give you this. And yet we push into informed consent when we're talking about any kind of medical treatment, right? So one of the things that I do then, because firstly, kuthethwa nje phambi kwabantu, you know, oh, hi, she's lazy, and we're going to have to do something else. So now I also coach my clients, at a certain point, you're going to have to listen only to my voice. I'll relay exactly what was said, but in a different way. Because you know, this mom she's a lazy mom and everything. And it affects their emotions, which affects those hormones that we need to be at a certain point, and she progresses well.
I cannot believe you're saying that the hormone that makes you happy is the one that's needed for you to push.
Oxytocin. That's the hormone that helps with the baby bearing down. Kubuhlungu kunjalo.
That is so wild.
Kubuhlungu kunjalo. And our grandmothers knew. We've always known. We've always birthed in community. Always.
What does that mean? Please unpack it for us.
We've always had, emakhaya, there will always be, even, there's always an aunt or umakhulu who's assigned to you, and they'll make sure that you're fed and everything. And even during birth, you know, they hold that space for you, because that's what we do. We have to hold that space and everything. So they hold that space for you. And there's that understanding, you have people holding space for you and people that you generally know what they care for you. And that's what we bring into the hospitals as well. Because the nurse, they've got their own targets and all those things. Now I'm here solely for you and your partner.
Do you think so? Obviously you think so, but what is the difference then with having a doula and not having one?
The difference is significant. You, especially for a first-time mom, and even if it's a second child, no two births are the same. So you need who will be reassuring you, and you know Umtu is not speaking on behalf of Isbedlel or on behalf of a certain doctor. It's like me and you, and I'll tell you, Nziki, this is where we are. This is what we need to do. We need to keep moving. So Lendo that we've seen on TV, where you see in hospitals and these nurses are shouting at about to keep on walking, it's actually necessary during labor, because we're also utilizing gravity. So contractions, what they do, they keep moving the baby, so they navigate and they have to find that space. And then, so we have to have you upright, moving, so that we work along with nature. Dana must bear down and everything. And I'll be the one, like I've had 48-hour birth, and we keep at it. And it's normal, because we get shocked by the period of time, right? But labor is long. Labor is long, and it's labor intensive. So
that's why it's called labor.
That's why it's called labor. Aptly named, isn't it?
So it's hard work to have a baby.
It's hard work. It really is hard work. And women who had a doula during their births, they have better maternal outcomes. And during the process, Umdu would be complaining. There's a period where now bazani tuka nonke.
Yes.
And right. But that period as well, that's information to me. I know how close you are because now you've gotten to that point where you're like, I don't want anything, ndifuna ugoduka, ndifuna umamam. Then I know how close you are to giving birth. And so those processes, they help. And so that's why the city, Tina, that's the community that we have. We don't have the community now at Dolopin, But Dala, that's why they were assigned women in the family or community who will help you give birth.
There's this thing that once happened. I know someone where they went to a gynecologist, they were going to gynaes and everything. They went to the hospital to go and check what's happening in the womb. Mm-hmm. And then when they came up, they were going to take out the uterus, whatever it is. But when they got there, they saw it's a mess. And then they stitched the person up again and they said, you know what, it's such a mess in there. You'll never be able to have children. And we didn't know what to do. Then a year later, she has a child. And 2 years later, she has another child. So what is that?
Tina, I don't know with that specific incident what happened, right? So what I do now in my practice is that with my client, before you go for a checkup, firstly, when Umtu calls me before they even see an OBGYN, I tell them, see a midwife. See a midwife, Kala. Midwife will assess you and everything. And I think the nice thing with midwives is that they work with their hands. They literally touch you, With OBGYNs, it's usually you pee in a cup, they test your urine, and then there's a scan, and they're like, oh, everything is fine and everything. But there's something reassuring and nurturing about midwives and how they touch you, they use their hands for a lot of things, And if you are low risk, if your pregnancy is low risk and everything, you'll continue with the midwife. If it's high risk, if there's issues there, high blood pressure or gestational diabetes and everything, your midwife will always refer you to an OBGYN. But we don't see it the other way around. If you go to an OBGYN and you have no issues, it's unlikely that they will say, maybe you should see a midwife. So then those that do see OBGYN, so midwives explain things much better and the time as well. I'm
just wondering, how do they get it so wrong? Because they were like, this womb won't produce anything, and the womb produced 2 babies, healthy babies.
The challenge that we have is the hierarchy in the health industry. So specialists are like right there at the top, and what they say goes, And then midwives are just nurses, which is incorrect. Saying they're just the nurse. They do serious work. So when my clients then go to see their OBGYNs, we have a sit down and I use an acronym BRAIN. That was anything that they tell you. If they say we have to do Indwetile, you ask, what are the benefits? What are the risks? What alternatives? What's my intuition telling me? And what if I say no? That BRAIN acronym works all the time. And that forces them to actually ask questions because I wonder why they don't ask questions. They just accept. We have to do a C-section. And there are all these things where people are forced into these situations. So they don't, I wouldn't know what happened there. But when they come out of it also, one of the thing that I do, now we talk about that. How did your session go? And did you ask this? What did he say? Do you understand what this means? Abantu abaninzi, we're working in the dark because we just accepted the guy and he said this and then that's it.
Yes. So because we don't live in a culture where midwives are even a hashtag even. So where do we start? Like there are lots of young moms or even older moms who are watching and first-time moms also wondering, okay, so what does this mean? And
I think we start with, this is a good start, these conversations, it's a good start. And debriefing, I tell my clients, Jonga, if you have something that you were challenged with, we debrief about it so that when you talk to the next person, you don't give them the horror story about birth. Because then everyone they start having these misconceptions about midwives and everything. Midwives are everywhere. They're really everywhere. Maybe there's a restriction in terms of the HPCSA. There's a way you can't advertise and, those are prices and everything. But they really are everywhere. And the benefit of social media as well. Ukuthi abantu then when they get pregnant and they go on TikTok and then they're getting all this information. The challenge is always ukuthi then how do you filter that information and even the kind of doula that you have. With the clients that I get, when people interview me, I always tell them ukuthi interview 2 other people, because for this work it's essential that you click and you get along well with your doula and you're aligned, so kube clear. And then I'll recommend a midwife. I'll recommend a birth in place. It's just, I think there's also an element of thinking ukuthi it's out of reach for a lot of people.
Yes.
And one of the things we were discussing with Indoya NHI and how they're trying to promote access to care and everything, there's nothing there about doulas. And if you think about it, the public sector would actually benefit more because those nurses are overwhelmed. And if we could have doulas who would help people progress quicker and, because and you don't make an appointment. So when you're in labor, you have to go there. So it would help if in a public setting we had easy access to doulas, okay, we have some people here, especially in full moon. There are a lot of births at full moon.
No way. So this thing is true?
It's true. There's MOU, midwife-led clinic here in Hillbrow. Like when it's full moon, people are birthing from the door. Like the door would be closed because and then immediately right there on the floor, the baby comes.
Oh, do you think that obviously has to do with the tides and the fact that the womb is connected to the moon and the pulling of the water?
Absolutely. The womb is connected to the moon anyways, through menstruation and everything, right? Yeah, so the connection doesn't go away just because now you're not menstruating anymore. It's true. It's beautiful. And to think ukuthi then when clients tell their doctors ukuthi I'm going to hire a doula, I don't believe in that woo-woo stuff. It's not for them to believe, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not for them to believe. You are entitled, according to guidelines, the national guidelines for maternal health, you're entitled to have a birthing partner of your choice. And we don't know that. Singabantu, we think ukuthi, I have to get permission, and hospital policy. And hospitals also have, they're highly litigious. So yonke into bayijonga from that perspective as well. We don't want you to be squatting, what if mntana uyawa and everything. But it is such a natural process. All these things that they worry about, they're unlikely to happen. Even if umdu gets into a squat and births, Tina, in birthing clinics, for example, I come out of it's either because umdu got down on her hands and knees, so we get down on the hands, midwives too. So we follow the birthing mom where she is, because the body tells them as well. Yes, the body tells them when they feel like squatting, they'll say, I think I need to squat. Class squatters, we're just on the lookout the entire time. And then they want to walk, then they want to get on all fours. We adjust with the mom, to the mom. In hospitals, they're going to put you on your back. And when you think about that, inconvenience kakabani.
Because the aim is to push the baby out, right?
The aim is to push the baby out, and the aim is to listen to your body as the baby's transitioning. So if we're going to insist, you have to be on your back, it's a challenge on its own.
Tell me about the spiritual relationship between us women and our wombs.
I mean, Setswana says it very well. Mudimu ka Setswana ke mupi, and our wombs ke popelo. Right, that's a place of creation. So I totally see it doesn't have a lot of things to it. It's just straightforward. We are creators of life, and we carry that life. And then even after, you could even say you're a planet on your own, because we get born into this planet and we depend on it for sustenance and food and everything. And now we birth children, and then after umntana ezalwa, then you're nursing them from your own body, and so it's same thing.
Are some of miscarriages created by unprocessed trauma and stuff, like, or is it just nature that some people make it, some people don't, or is it something you can avoid?
All three. All three can happen. Uko, sometimes when I explain to, there are a lot of people who want to avoid labor, for example, and they say, Uti, they found out Uti is too painful and everything. And one of the conversations that I have with them is about ixesha, how we understand when it's time for something. And kaninzi ndiyababuza ukuthi, so what's your view on death? And the answer is usually always the same, ukuthi ixesha lakho helena kwahawo kena kwahawo, right? And then so ndibuza ukuthi, okay, so let's look at the alternative, ukuthi, so do you think ukuthi ixesha lokufika as well libekiwe? Because then when we have a C-section, then it's an intervention. And kaninzi, it's planned around the medical practitioner, which the doctor is available does C-sections on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So this is when you come. And I think similarly so, some miscarriages, it wasn't the time for that soul to arrive. It is the trauma itself, because your throat and your womb, they're very linked. In fact,
what do you mean?
In fact, even the build of it is the same. The structure of your vocal cords and your uterus, they're shaped the same. So when it's unprocessed, things that you haven't spoken about, which is why I said, would I do my practice the way I do, it does have an effect. Abanye abantu, I realized during birth, ukuthi lo muntu probably was sexually assaulted. Because that pain, we've got what we call the ring of fire when the baby's crowning, when the head is coming out.
Yes.
And that pain sort of reminds them of that.
Oh my God.
So this is usually when in public spaces goes out to vula imilenze kaloku ntonton, right? Because they tend to then shut their knees, close. So I imagine they're fortunate ukuthi bafikile to that point where they do give birth. Abanye, they don't get there. Abanye, they don't get there because they have miscarriages because of their own traumas and And then abanye, it's like medical. It's a medical thing. It would be your hormones. It could be anything. It could be something that's genetic. So hlukile for different people.
Is it a normal fear for women to get pregnant and be scared of losing the baby during the pregnancy? Just the fear of, oh my God, am I going to make it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The moment, a lot of people, the moment they get pregnant, already their mind or the system starts being wired to protecting. So, especially mothers, now you start with the risk assessments, So, I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I can't be running. And so it's natural. It's natural because so qalile, the process of wanting to protect umntana and all of that. So when I then sit down before birth, when I sit down with the birthing mom and their partner, it's also important that I tell the partner, ukuthi, there's a stage where she's going to say she doesn't want to do this anymore. And it's important that you don't interfere because now already they get into protection mode. Ukuthi, my wife can't die. If my wife dies, the baby dies, right?
Yes.
So we have to prepare people for that process. This is what's going to happen. Automatically, you're already a dad and you're already a mom. So it's natural to be mindful and be protective of this.
What conversations should we now be having amongst women? Because we've gone through many generations, ne? There was a time when you were younger, it was you were expected to have children when you were younger so that the body is stronger and what. But now we're finding women having, like what Hattie Berry, having their women in their 40s. Right? So which part is propaganda? When is the right time for women to be having children?
The propaganda is in how women value themselves. one of the things I've shared with my nieces, and it's a conversation I have with my daughters as well, Wuti, you need to look at what stage in your life is it that we as a society consider you to be losing value. And I don't know how old you are, but I realized now, Wuti, when I got into my 30s, I was now mentally more astute. I knew what I wanted. And then you get older, you get your 40s, and then now you're very clear.
Yes.
And then I'm thinking, I'm becoming like those grandmothers, and everything, right? Because but the point I'm making, Uti, is when you approach your 30s, and then they say, Uti, you're starting to lose value. Uti, you're too old to get married, you're too old to have children and everything. But value for who? Because with the time when you value yourself more. So that's the lie. I think if we have that understanding of the lie about
So it's an individual thing.
It's an individual thing and it's a societal thing. We must stop telling women, Uti, you too old, who's going to marry you now in your 30s and everything. The challenge is that you can't be molded into something else the older you get. And so Halle Berry was probably in a perfect position to be having a child.
Even
in her
financially,
40s.
exactly.
Even financially, And she probably didn't even have a fear, Yoguchi, these are lashwa. And because she was
starting a baby for her.
She's having a baby for her. And so it's when we start being solid internally and understanding ourselves that to the world, we start losing our value as women. So then a lot of times then young girls also rush to do everything in their 20s. You think, Uti, okay, I have to get married. I have to, because by 30 I'll be old. But by 30 you probably even be having the best sex of your life because now you understand yourself. It's not performative anymore. Styles.
Yeah, exactly.
And things like that, right? So it's how we speak to girls, and how we must stop doing is with the lens your value is attached to a relationship with a man and what that man could find for you. I mean, we still do have people who don't who would still tell their daughters, don't buy a house now. I mean, indoda yakho is going to be, if you find a husband, he's going to be, uzawufika thini endlini yakho, But they must do all of that. So that's where the lie is, what we teach girls about the value, and that the value is external. And even in birth, I have to tell the partners as well, by the way, during birth, you are not a decision maker at all, even if you're a husband. Even if you're a husband, you're not the one who's going to say, I think it's time for a C-section. It's not your decision at all. A lot of them struggle with it.
What?
They do. They really do. They struggle with it. And also seeing, and how I got to that point was also seeing Wuti in a time of when things are really ramping up during birth. And then the doctors are saying, Wuti, well, we've tried this, and don't know, I'm suggesting this. Baby, what do you think?
I know, right?
So it's how we were conditioned. Wuti, there's like a lack of agency in how we teach girls
about their own bodies.
Bruh. And
imagine asking some dude about your body. What do you think?
I don't know, once. Who said scare. And I thought, why would you even visualize that? It has to be scare, So those are the lies. Then we teach from a very young age already. We're teaching young girls terrible things about their wombs. They get their period and we're like, how's that? And then during the course of them now, when they start getting used to being on their period and everything, even what we model as their mothers and aunts is flawed, because then we dread our period. Like,
Yes.
my period is coming, right?
Yes.
And then the period comes, you're like, oh yeah, thank goodness I'm not pregnant. And that message is off. So we have to, there's a lot of things that with the internal conversations that we have to teach abantwana bamantombazana, and the boys as well must listen in on those conversations, so that when you get to this point of planning a family and wanting to give birth and all of that, ngoba nguwe umuntu oqala who should know what it is that you want and everything. Yes, you are in a union of sorts, but the decisions are yours.
So speaking of that, then what is the role of men then in parenting? Because I need to, all the time we always see it's the mom who's looking after the children. What's the role of men and fathers?
Exactly that. They should father. They are contributors. When you look at how we even pick our partners, they have a contribution ebanayo, and we don't know the children that we're going to have. I tell my clients, Uguti, that baby you carried for almost 10 months, you're meeting them for the first time the day you give birth. You've been walking around with this person the entire time.
A stranger.
But it's a stranger, right? And it's also a stranger in the sense that you don't know this baby, which is about close nabani as well. So with my daughters as well, there are a lot of things that they tell their father first instead of telling me. And this is not that we would have generally thought, this is what you tell your mother. So you let it be. They must parent. They must show up. They must have all the information now,
Because what is it? Who has given men permission to be absent dads? Because some of them say they want to be fathers, but then we're blocking them out. Can we just unpack that situation?
Relationships are complex. Relationships are complex, and we are called to make difficult decisions. In pregnancy, when a lot of couples, when they get pregnant and everything, first, a lot of times it's not planned. So then they start having an issue, which are we keeping or not, right? And then it's sort of like a ripple effect. If one person said, I don't think I'm ready, obviously the decision is yours. So you make the decision to keep the baby. And we then as a society want to say, no, but you made the decision to keep the baby. Like, no, we made the baby. We can't forgo the first step and say, but this is the decision, And there's a lot of grief in parenting as well. So now you have a child and you grieve that year or 2 years where now you are pregnant and you can't do as much. And there's a baby. There's grief to that. When I was expecting, we had our daughters a year apart. And that's when my husband was getting promotions. And I felt like he was leaving me behind. And there was a day I was crying, like, I feel like you're leaving me behind, And he understood. But those are things that affect relationships to begin with. And if we don't address ezozindo, and if we have a space where we can correctly even name our emotions, and people don't take izinto personally, when I say, I feel like you're leaving me behind, I'm not saying that he is. This is a feeling that I have. But seeing abantu and our conversation, then you defensive, no, but why would you say this? This is going to benefit the whole family, and that's not what the person is saying at all. What you are actually saying, I'm
feeling unsafe.
I'm feeling stuck. My career now should be building up at this point. Abanye abantu, it changes with the pregnancy. Then realize, I actually want to be a stay-at-home mom. But that's not the plan that you had as a couple. So those challenges, they are contributors to people breaking up, and there's resentment and, these unresolved issues. And a lot of men, of course, they compartmentalize, right? But we're talking about this. Why are you bringing other things? But, there's always a thread that connects this emotion to that emotion. So, anivani ngoku, ingati you're fighting about totally different things. So then those are the things then that usually lead to how umuntu can show up as a parent. And akukho mntu orongo, by the way, in that situation where that disagreement, because umuntu nomuntu was stuck in their perspective, right? But then now you have to make decisions about access. Kube nzima. Bakhona abanye abakhathali, like, just like there are lions out there in the world that eat their young or kill the young, you know. Bakhona abanye abangakhathaliyo, and they're not part of it and everything. And I encourage these difficult conversations in my consultations, because you have to assess ukuthi nimephi about this. What did you talk about? What is your expectation? To understand ukuthi you are now the primary family, because another thing that's an issue is that umuntu athi hayi thina ekhaya kuthiwa nitshadile ngelo xesha, you know. Kokhaya haretse so. So then you have to. This is kokhaya now, you know. So those are the other things that pull people apart. So now I tell them, work on your conflict resolution. When you disagree about something, how do you resolve that conflict and get to a place where ladumelana about one thing, and then eat planeteta with the rest of the world, be it your extended families, whatever, you speak with one voice.
What do you mean when you say work on your conflict resolution?
You will not agree on everything during parenting.
How do we work on our conflict resolution?
You understand each other. You hold space. I think you see people for who they are. I know we say it usually when people show you who they are and everything, but even in a healthy relationship, you have to see them for who they are. My husband, for example, him and time, yeah, he's chilled. And it'd be cute in the beginning of the relationship, right? Like, you cannot rush my husband. But now it's like, dude, we need to go. And we've had to find a way to have that discussion. Like, and Gamai Maklesha is like, we delayed because then he realized Uti is hungry. And I'll be like, have an apple. And he's like, no, I'm hungry. Right? And then you realize, Uti, am I even right? Uti, I want to honor into a klesha umdu elambile type of thing. So you come to a decision and you have to agree on it. Uti, I think for other things, was anfumana pambili, and then, you know, so, and you have to figure out a way of resolving a conflict as partners and understanding each other. One of the things I had to ask for with my husband was, when I'm unhappy about something, he must let me talk. So then I would sit there like, what? And when you did this? But then we realized what happens is that I start off and complaining, and then I'm like, wait, but you didn't ask me to do that. Then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't ask me to do that. I imposed that on you. It took about 4 years to get to that point.
Wow.
Of like, and when you said this and I felt this way, don't you know. But the more we practice humans, we should give men this. The men should practice the same thing.
Yes, it's true.
Know. And so the more you practice that sort of thing, and everything is practice, and everything you have to practice it to get it right. Now it happens quicker. Now it happens very quick, where usually would have been an hour-long conversation. I didn't like this. Why did you make this decision? And then you get to a point where you're like, you didn't say that. You said this. Nah, I thought this. So when you then have children, I coach my clients as well. Have an agreement on when you ask for help. Because we have structured the women are the primary caretaker of the babies.
Yes,
right?
That's what I was asking.
So umntana xa pilanga, and now you stayed overnight and watching this baby being sick, and then in the morning you say to your spouse, I think we need to go to the doctor. He saw the baby throwing up once. When you saw it the whole night.
Yeah.
And so you have to have those things in place as well. What happens when we don't agree? Because Nandi, I saw this the whole time. And when are you like, oh no, it wasn't so bad because you only saw a portion of it. So those are some of the things we get
Even
into as well.
The exhaustion issue. When do men step up to look after the children? Because moms get tired.
Moms get tired. And a client that I was with yesterday, I had to tell her spouse, you are going to have to be assertive about it. because they observed things traditionally. Uti, she went and stayed with her parents. It's going to be for 2 months and everything, so he's not around. So she's now getting used to making all the decisions, being the one that's getting up and everything. And I was saying to him, Uti, you are going to have to be assertive. You're not helping, you're doing your part. Because the language as well is important. Did you so? And there's a mother load. There's this thing called the mother load where you realize what women, mothers, are always thinking about things 10 steps ahead. Last year, there was a day we have Andrew who comes in on Fridays. And on a Tuesday, my husband and I were standing on the balcony, and then it started raining. I have to do the laundry tomorrow morning. I don't know, and it was on Friday. Yes, but if it's raining, it could rain for the next few days. Washing is not going to get dry. And that's when it hit him. This is the mother load. Like, yes, you're always thinking about this needs to be in place and everything. So they have to be proactive now and insist on it. And I think even with this thing with the parental leave fine and everything, I was saying, Wuti, it shouldn't be split. I mean, it takes a pregnant woman at least a year to heal physically and emotionally sometimes to just regroup after birth. So we're going to split the 4 months and 10 days. You decide how you're going to split it. No, at least 6 months for the woman alone. And you take in consideration, Uti, even the employers, they've got policies, Uti, you must take your maternity leave by a certain time, maybe 2 weeks before you give birth. But we don't know, because we're waiting. We're in ceremony here. We don't push things to happen in our own time. So those things are contributors as well with how company policies are structured. And, we make it easier for our daughter to step back. And they benefit from it and they take it.
And I think that's what's coming out from this episode is that actually it's a lot of work, this labor thing.
It's a lot of work. There is a breaking that happens in a woman. Spiritually. That happens during birth. And it has to happen in a safe space. It has to happen with people that you love or people that genuinely care for you. In essence, they're going to shift she goes away, who doesn't know you, you don't know what she's going through. And so these women don't feel taken care of and they don't feel safe, because of those spaces. So a doula is supposed to hold that space for you. And, even Lendo Benditeta about the hierarchy in hospitals and how we value more what doctors say. Like Lendo Gutwa, one of the OBGYNs I've worked with was saying, Uti, this is woo stuff. And yeah, as if woo stuff are bad. This is woo stuff. I don't believe in these things. There's no evidence and everything. And what I then realized, Wuti, to get my clients to be focused in this whole process and be deep in it, I use language as well. Because their husbands are usually the ones that say, Wuti, no, but the doctor said this doesn't work. The doctor doesn't believe, And I remember I was telling this one guy, so what's your issue? And he says, no, but this has to be evidence-based and, that's fine. That is so, let's talk language then. Let's break it down. Let's break it down. Evidence. Right. Tina, we are custodians of this information. Yes. So that's evidence. We have to be and observe this thing, this process of birth. And it's a rite of passage. It should be held in reverence. It's not a medical thing. And I think that's also the unique thing about birth. It's not a medical event. It's a rite of passage. Think about it. So these people are supposed to hold space in that way. So nati as doulas, And when Umtu comes out of it, like this recent client come out of it, and she's like, yo, I was struggling so much. And I was saying to her, Guti, you know you did well. Did you know that you did well? And I was breaking it down to NDT. Abona, through everything, when you're struggling with the pain, and we gave you instructions, Guti, when the contraction comes, this is what you do. You took that instruction very well. She's like, really? Yes. The pain is part of it. So, so the witnesses, which is what we do, it's essential to have a witness who really has your back and who really see this for what it really is, which is a beautiful process. It's labor intensive, it's painful, but you did well. You did well.
Sure. So as we start to wrap up, how can men be better support structures? Because now we've established that what women bring to the table is labor. So how can men be better to us?
They're not better to us. It's for their benefit too. And I get what you're asking. Men must be active participants in this process. I always joke with them, your contribution was a fun time.
2
It
minutes.
was an orgasm.
Exactly.
Right? And then you're like, but they must go to prenatal classes. They really must. A big part of the challenge in birth is men who don't have information about the process. And once they approach the process openly and without fear, and also knowing, I think I emphasize which we must be clear about the distinction of uvalo, lizwalo, and fear of the unknown. Because in those moments, we mix those two up and we're thinking, this fear of the unknown, it means something is wrong. But you must know when this is instinct, uvalo, and you must know when it's like just fear of the unknown. So get a doula, go to counseling, go to antenatal classes, and be actively involved. You're not just a bystander. And those men who have invested themselves in the process fully, they show up better. Even because a lot of breakups happen with this process. But they still show up in a beautiful way,
I was going to ask you, how does child labor affect relationships?
Yeah, it's a serious transition. The amount of hormones, the hormonal changes in a woman, it's insane, I saw recently, if men were to experience just the hormonal change that we go through in ovulation, I think they would die in 2 days, literally. So relationships do get affected. And there are a lot of unspoken expectations, even though we were just kicking it, now we're pregnant. And then I come in and say, but I never wanted to have a child out of wedlock. So there are multiple things that affect relationships in that time. Some men, they are affected by the realization that they won't be able to provide as they thought they would. And so zininzi wethu izinto, zininzi family, how they show up impacts your relationship with your spouse. Because then in that process there are then challenges into zesintu, for example. Now we're debating wait, it damages, does it mean sihlawule umntana okanye we're acknowledging wrongdoing? Those are very contentious issues in relationships. So now, and that's when I push that conversation, you are now the primary family. Because so a lot of people break up and then they make up when things have stabilized as well. So some break up immediately after the baby has arrived. So it's insane and it's intense.
Sure, it's so fascinating. And then, I'm trying to remember what the other question was. Because I'm trying to figure out how we move around the womb as women, and especially new moms, and how men can help us in this process. But I had such a good... Oh, it was the NHI question. You brought up the NHI.
And since this conversation is telling us that we need a doula, because that's part of the spiritual and emotional support of child labor. So what do we do now to bring up this conversation and to include it into this NHI, even though it's late now, but...
Yeah. Into emnandi about us as human beings is that even if we do the same work, we advocate in different ways. So there are different organizations that I'm a fellow with one of organizations that's for supporting moms and everything. And these people have access to people who are the powers that be, those sort of things. So we make strides. Sometimes we approach hospitals. We volunteer. Can I come and just help out and everything, and you pitch it. This is what, because a lot of medical practitioners don't even know about doulas, by the way.
My goodness.
So you always have to pitch it. Hey, I know you're understaffed. This is the value that I can bring and everything, and then they'll talk to the next person. Actually, this is beneficial, But at NHI level, I mean, like you said, that horse has bolted. But we are finding ways to approach it from multiple avenues. So, and I mean, some of us, we do it individually as well. I'll let you know, this is what you're entitled to as a birthing person. You have a right for this, and and abanye, there will be those who do the big, wider fight. And so it's ongoing. It's ongoing, but at the same time, singabantu, so there's some people that then are pulled into the money element of it as well, and then they go with that. So it ebbs and flows every time, but it's something that we really are working on.
And then lastly, do you midwives go for training somewhere, or it's a gift that's passed down in families? How does...
Doulas or midwives?
Oh, it's not the same thing?
It's not the same thing. I can't do medical interventions.
Goodness gracious. So the midwife actually takes out the baby. And the
doula
does
the baby, yes.
The emotional, mental work.
Yes.
Ah.
So, and for some of them, a lot of us, it's a matrilineal thing. We get it from our grandmothers, and and it comes out in the journey. A doula I recently worked with, we had a very, very hectic birth. And I saw she aged 1,000 years. And then I realized Wutinai is a gift. It's a spiritual gift. Like, And the way even she held the space, and she was so compact, she aged like I probably am the only one who saw it. But she aged, like, I'm talking about wrinkles, and aged 1,000 years. And she commanded that room in such a way that I can't get over it now when I think about it now, and I haven't even told her. So I'm waiting for a time to come when I'll tell her, this is what I saw when we had that birth. So for a lot of us, it is a gift. It's matrilineal. We get it from our mothers and grandmothers. And I think that's why it's important also when you interview your doula, you get a sense of why she got into the work and everything. Other doulas get into the work because they don't want someone else to go through what they went through. It's important to assess that person as well. But have you resolved your own issues? Have you not? And then abanye, it's just purely spiritual. But we do the training for access to hospitals and everything. And even then, we still have to tap dance. There's a hospital I go to often. I meet a different nurse every time. I have to point out, I teach, and then I do this, and this is, And then it's like, oh, now you're legit. And they're like, no, I'm on the Discovery Network. So they can pay me a Discovery or Fed Health, or Momentum. And they're like, also the medical aids. I'm like, yes. Then for them, it's like, oh.
It's official.
It's official. But it's a gift that I've had. It's always been there. My mother recently told me, after years of doing this work, and she's like, oh, yazi umakhulu wakho ngokusase Queenstown. Bekubizwa yena xa kukho umuntu. I'm like, lady, why are you telling me this only now? But even that has its own benefits, because I don't think if she had told me before, I would have heard it.
So affirming, right?
It's so affirming. So affirming. The grandmother was named after as well, Nomkini. So I'm like, oh, Nomkini, thank you so much.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
It's beautiful work. It's beautiful work. It's hard. It's extremely challenging. It's extremely challenging.
I never asked what happens when the baby doesn't make it.
That's when you would have the death doula comes, a bereavement doula. Sorry, not a death doula. A death doula, they help you transition. But a bereavement doula is more equipped to help with that process. For me, it's slightly different. I realized that spiritually, I help with the transition to arrive anyways. So
that's someone else's job.
That's someone else's job. So sibambene ngezandla sonke, then okay, I do my bit, and then So if a baby doesn't make it, I haven't lost a baby at birth. I have been a bereavement doula for a friend before I got into the work. I remember that this morning, interestingly. And I did, when I looked at the guidelines for bereavement doulas, I did a lot of those things on that day. I took a picture, and they didn't realize, I made sure they held the baby, they said the goodbyes and all of that when I was deep in that grief myself. So yeah, you would have to get a bereavement doula for that. And they will also manage the care, because you will be sitting there and the baby is gone, and you still have people talking medical terms around you, when your world is just falling apart. So that's where a bereavement doula would come in.
Phew, what an episode. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so interesting.
Thank you.
And we hope you'll come again, and because this conversation is a long one. Yeah, especially for couples
it's intricate
and stuff. Moya light, Moya bright. We always renew the conversations that we need to be having so that we can be better people and we can evolve nicely. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you to the members for helping us keep our lights on, and we'll see you again next time.
Who are you when all you were has been diluted by lies and white lines cancelling out all that which has been written of your history? Why do you look at yourself as a mystery? Doesn't the sun shine because you open your eyes? Doesn't the moon stay situated within the same stars your DNA sparkles off? Your spirit knows that surely corner into it off. Buza umoya so you may return to being well off. Because spiritually you are rich, yet your ancestors cry because you are out of reach. But yours is to command all elements while God takes inspiration from the very mirror she looked at to become. Remember who you are and never finish just when they think that with you they are done.